Good evening. You're watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel. I'm attorney Karen Jimeno, sitting in for Jing Magsaysay. Tonight, we are joined by someone whose task is to steer government's effort on women's empowerment and gender equality in our country. She is the Executive Director of the Philippine Commission on Women, Ms. Emmeline Verzosa. Good evening, Ms. Emmeline.
Good
and
evening,
thank you for
Attorney
being
Karen.
with us tonight.
My pleasure.
So first things first, maybe we can educate the people on what the Philippine Commission on Women is all about.
Yes, well, the Philippine Commission on Women is actually 38 years old, and we are mainly a policy-making and coordinating body for women's concerns and gender concerns.
Okay. But it seems that a lot of people still up to now don't really know about PCW, maybe because they don't see it as the main agency being approached by women directly. I mean, what is the role so far of PCW?
Well, as an oversight and monitoring body, which is what is now written in the Magna Carta of Women, which we help push, we are under the Office of the President, and our main task is really to make sure that all government agencies at the national and local level review their policies and programs and see if there are any discriminatory practices or provisions or services.
So it's more women. Behind the scenes.
It's more behind the scenes.
Yeah, not
yes.
a lot of physical interaction with the women.
No, we cannot go, we don't go straight to the women because we're a very small agency and our main task is really oversight.
Okay.
And then we have a board of commissioners actually composed of 10 government agencies and NGO.
That already includes DSWD, for instance.
It includes DSWD,
okay.
Department of Trade, Department of Labor, oversight agencies like NEDA,
so that's why it's not that visible,
yes.
no? Because you basically have all these agencies working together
right.
for women.
Right.
What would you consider as some of the major achievements of PCW?
Well, through the years, our main strategy in making this work is what we call gender mainstreaming. So we've had a lot of laws passed. The most recent major law is RA 9710, which is the Magna Carta of Women, which actually is our national translation of a UN International Human Rights
so it's
Treaty
very
of
comprehensive.
CEDAW, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and that covers all spheres of life, social, economic, cultural, political,
when you say
civil, no?
gender mainstreaming, how would you define this?
Well, it's telling government agencies or entities to review whether the basic questions to ask when you do gender analysis is who has access to and control over resources. So agencies are supposed to look, when I have a particular program or service, to whom is it really addressed? Does it provide equal opportunities for both women and men to have access to these services?
So it's not really just giving women an advantage. When you say gender mainstreaming, it's making sure that both genders
yes.
have equal access to opportunities.
Right. And then because we look at the situation of women, in certain spheres, women are really at a disadvantage. So we also push for women's empowerment to make sure that they are able to be empowered, to speak up, and to articulate what their problems are.
Well, we're a country who has already had 2 past female presidents, which I think is a lot to say compared to other Asian countries, for instance, in the region. So a lot of other countries say that in terms of equality, actually, the Philippines has achieved a lot.
Yes.
Would you agree with this statement?
Well, based on the World Economic Forum study, we're one of the only Asian country in the top 10 in the gender gap index. No, so like now we're number 8. We used to be number 6. We became number 9. On certain indicators like life expectancy, education, and political participation and economic. But they're measuring the gap. They're not measuring the development levels. So if we look at the Philippines, we're still middle income na ngayon, but we still have a long way to go in terms of poverty. There's still a lot of women who don't have the access. Yes, we are in terms of education, the boys are the ones dropping out of school in all levels.
Yeah.
And,
actually, in law school during my generation, we had more women than men in class, and then basically in terms of access to higher education, women are not at a disadvantage anymore.
Yes, no more. So I think that's one of the accomplishments through the years of our advocacy, that more women are actually participating in terms of education. That's a concern actually if you look at the Millennium Development Goals, where goal number 3 is promote women's empowerment and gender equality, remove gender disparity. Now we're concerned because, yes, women have achieved, the girls have achieved high educational, they're able to participate in school, but the boys are dropping out. So we don't like that to happen as well, because you can look at the overall impact in the long run. What if, I mean, what kind of society will we have?
Yes.
Boys are just,
Yes. And do you think there are programs that can still equate, basically put them on an equal
Yes,
level?
we've talked to the Department of Education. They're very much aware of this, and at the cabinet cluster of the Human Development and Poverty Reduction, this is being discussed. And so they're retraining their teachers to be more conscious about the differences in how boys and girls learn. And there are also alternative learning systems, because some of the boys, or most of the boys, I guess, they have to work. That's why they drop out of school.
okay.
Yeah, they're in the farms and all that. So there are other, DepEd has all these programs.
Okay, I'd like to go back to politics
Okay.
in terms of access by women to political positions. In other countries, they've come up with legislation that requires, for instance, either their Senate seats or congressional seats to give a certain quota for women.
Right.
So would you think this is necessary in the Philippines, or
Well,
something like this would be good for the Philippines?
Yeah, in the Magna Carta of Women, we've actually put certain quotas, like at the local level, these local special bodies, like the local health board, local development council, should have at least 40% representation. In the NAPC, for example, they have 14 basic sectors, and in the IRR of the Magna Carta, it was put that 30% of all the basic sectors should have representatives of women.
I'm not sure if a lot of people are aware of this. No?
Well, it's implemented. It is. They made sure that NAPC people made sure that in the farmers group, laborers group, there are women farmers, women leaders, women workers, women IPs in all these basic sectors. Because although women has one specific sector, if we're talking of mainstreaming gender and women, they should be in all these. No? In terms
so basically,
of,
they require a quota that
in a sense
there
that's a quota.
Some women in these positions.
Then, yes, in the appointive positions, we also put in the Magna Carta on third level positions should be 50%.
Okay.
50%,
That's great. Do you have you had instances where this is basically resisted by people from the local level, like basically men complaining that this is unfair? Why should we give 50% of the positions automatically to women? What about more qualified men?
Well, of course, the issue is, of course, it's not just because you're a woman, you should be there. You have to, the woman should also be qualified, and the appointment should also be based on merit.
Okay.
And that's why you can't take them separately. You know, you have to be educated, you have to be trained, and as a woman, you have to be able to advocate the women's issues and gender issues.
Okay. What about current legislation that PCW is pushing for?
Oh yeah, so we've already lined up our what we call a women's legislative agenda. One of those is the decriminalizing prostitution.
Okay, that's good. I was going to ask you about that.
No, should I rephrase it? Decriminalizing women in prostitution.
Okay,
because
I was going to ask you about existing legislation, about your opinion on whether you feel that they discriminate against women. And one of them, of course, is our very old law on prostitution.
RPC.
Yeah,
Right.
it's in the revised penal code.
Right.
So do you think that, obviously, now that you're trying to revise it, I guess you see it as something that discriminates against women?
Of course, because the definition of a prostitute there is a woman, right?
Yes,
Only.
yes, exactly.
Actually, that's the entire Article 202 of the revised penal code. There's a vagrancy part there, which is now repealed, decriminalized, no?
Yes.
By anti-vagrancy law. So we were not so happy that the provision of prostitute was retained. So we're still pushing for it. But what we're pushing for is for the women in prostitution, because we view prostitution as a form of violence against women. It's systemic. We want to change the views of society.
And this is
entire
even
society.
if basically prostitutes are, some of them, of course, unwillingly become part of that industry, but others who do it really for a living, you think that's still violence against them?
Yes, because you have to look at the whole thing. That's why the bill that we're pushing for would decriminalize the bar owners, the pimps, and the users of prostituted women.
Okay.
So it's a viewpoint that's really we need to change. That if there are no buyers, it's addressing the demand side of prostitution, the whole range of why prostitution.
But then if you make it legal, don't you think that it allows women to basically try to access this as a form of occupation? Because then there's no stigma if you say it's legal. So for them, they might think, well, it's a good alternative.
Well, for us, sex work is not decent work, and sex work is not.
Yeah, so you don't think
No.
there's a danger in that aspect?
No. We were following the Sweden, for example, and Korea have passed laws like that. So it's really a total mind change of.
And did it decrease prostitution in these countries where it was legal?
I think so.
Okay. What about that law on adultery and concubinage?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people are not aware of this. Now,
Yes.
if it's the man who has a mistress, there are so many requirements in order to file a criminal case for what you call concubinage against your husband. But if you're a woman, every sexual act with someone who's not your husband is considered a crime of adultery.
Yes.
So is this something that is also
Yes.
on the agenda of
Right.
PCW?
Yes, it's also one of the top agendas. We've tried to push that last Congress, but it didn't push through. So we're pushing for marital infidelity or sexual infidelity.
So para it's equal.
It's
that
equal
either
penalties.
husband or wife, as
Yes.
soon as you cheat, you can get
Yes. So equal penalties.
prosecuted criminally. Okay.
Right.
What about divorce?
Divorce, well, hard to say. Of course, we need to do our consultations with the women and other stakeholders. Many women are for it. Personally, we are for it, but officially, we cannot. We'll see. We will see how it fares.
Okay,
And
so this is not. You don't think that this is basically just an issue relating to women? So it's
mostly women are affected. Yes, and we would like more opportunities for them and for both women and men actually to move on after a failed marriage. You know?
Okay.
But then we have annulment as an alternative.
Yeah.
So we have to play we have to send, because after the RH, that was a very challenging bill on law to have passed.
Yes.
So we have to.
Okay. I'm going to ask you more about the RH bill. So very interesting. We still have plenty to discuss with our guests. News Cafe will return after this short break. You're still watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel, and we are still joined by our guest, Executive Director Emmeline Verzosa of the Philippine Commission on Women. What challenges does PCW normally encounter when you try to push for women advocacies?
Well, because our main clients are government agencies, and they're supposed to set up their what we call gender focal points. These are assigned people to make sure that they advocate and they look into their programs and remove discriminatory provisions. So sometimes these are on top of their regular work, and the training we train them, but usually one training is not enough. Yeah, so that's one challenge within the bureaucracy.
So that's internally.
When we pass for laws, like when we pass for the reproductive health law, I think everybody saw the big challenge
very controversial,
of different stakeholders. So that's another big chunk of challenge.
So you mean it's more of like people outside lobbying against certain bills?
Against our advocacy.
Would you know of any either institution na lagi nyong nakakabangga in terms of when you're pushing for
Well, of course,
bills?
the Catholic Church, the institutionalized Catholic Church. Because you know there are a lot of Catholics who are also for the bills that we are pushing for.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure pagka, kunwari, labor, it's not really very contentious with the Catholic Church, but the RH bill, I guess a lot of people saw really a lot of opposition and most of them coming from the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
But why do you think that is? Like with respect to the RH bill?
Well, because the church has a particular belief And I think they want to protect the life of the unborn.
But then, would you say that RH bill is anti-life?
There's nothing there that is anti-life, because what we believe in is that the RH bill will actually prevent abortion if access is made available to women and to couples of methods that they think would help them plan their families. No? So whether they are artificial or natural.
Yeah.
So it's really a choice that we are making for women.
Yes. In a few sentences, how would you say that RH bill pushes for the welfare of women?
Because it gives the women the power and the control to decide. Because she is the bearer of the child, so she has the responsibility, and she should have control over her body and decide what would be the best way for her to plan her family, and decide whether she wants to get pregnant, even with whom she wants to have found a family. So it's really about women's choice.
Okay, that's good to know, I guess, for people not very well informed, especially up to now. No, what about any programs that women like me and women out there can look forward to that PCW is working on currently?
Yeah. Well, we have this currently what we call a Great Women Project. No? It's funded by Canada. And it's really a pilot project of getting the economic agencies at the national, at the local level together, so that they can when they provide their services to women who want to be economically empowered, the women micro entrepreneurs, or the women who are just, they have their small negosyo, ganyan, can upscale their products.
Okay, no? But this is not just about funding. Basically, what does this Great Women Project provide to women?
Well, it says we want to enhance the enabling environment for women to have better access to enterprises, micro enterprises. So what we did, for example, was we put Department of Science and Technology into this project, and then Department of Trade, Department of Labor, even PhilHealth. Because we believe that when women have a business, they should have social protection like PhilHealth insurance, para yung capital niya hindi niya kakainin pag may health emergency. No? So that's why PhilHealth now has a partial subsidy for
coverage, because currently
because
may coverage.
Yeah, that's why PhilHealth now, when they became gender sensitized, which is what we do, they said that they should give their PhilHealth cards to women, because sometimes if you give it to the man and they leave, the woman will not have access to health. No? So ngayon, may policy sila that give it to the woman. Aside from that, they have partial subsidy now to the informal sector. So this informal sector are the ones that we're really targeting. They're mostly women. Okay. So for example, in Bohol, where they make calamay from a particular
I love
hog.
calamay.
I love calamay. Diba? The problem of the women when we were consulting them, how do you increase the shelf life? So here comes DTI. They teach them good manufacturing practices. DOS is okay. We have a machine, and then they suggest put it in plastic, and then the LGU says okay, instead of home-based, let's have a common service facility. So the LGU provides the building, DOST provides the equipment, and then they all get gender sensitized, including their husbands. So, testimonies of the women say, dati, hindi ako pinapansin ng asawa ko, binububog ako. Ngayon, may income na ako, mas nire-respect ako.
Economically empowered.
Economically
equates
empowered.
to having a better position, at least in the household and society.
Right. Yeah.
But
and not only that, they're also saying, now my LGU is listening to me. It's the first time that I participate in a planning session for the local economic development of my municipality. So kabit-kabit yan, no?
Yeah.
So you have social, for health, economic, political.
But how accessible is this? I mean, for women out there, a lot of them maybe are not aware of this project. So maybe they have enterprising minds, but they don't even know where to start. Who can we call? Saan kami lalapit? So how would you suggest?
So this, as I said, these are pilot, no? Because we don't go direct. So it's pilot. We were in 8 provinces. At the national level, we work with the national government agencies concerned. So our message lang to the women is to get to know what are available in your municipality or in your city.
What's the best way to do that? Go to your city hall?
Go to your city hall. There's public employment service officer. Know what the services are, because there are services. And because we in government, we're not that many, di ba?
Yes.
Streamline all that. So we can't really reach the entire
But information
population.
drive, can they access a website, for instance, that maybe shows what programs are available, what they can participate in?
That's the mandate now for all government agencies to publicize and to put in the internet, put in the web all the services that they have. So
it's
they can.
basically they can go to. How would they know where to go? Kunwari, if it's a concern of finding more economic opportunities, any
I guess
website or government
and
agency.
DTI and Department of Labor would have that. No?
Okay.
The
So that's
SWD for those from the welfare when they want to move up. So
And then if you're a
scaling
victim
yan.
of abuse, what's the best
Yeah,
search that
okay.
you can do?
The
like
search,
in terms of when you try to search on the internet. Okay, where can I go?
For violence against women, Magna Carta says all local government units should have a violence against women desk. The ILG reports 70% of barangays have such, but of course the training has to be done. So we have a handbook in our web so that whoever is assigned there will know what exactly to do. But basically, social workers and the police are trained on how to handle violence against women, at least for that. And then local officials for some LGUs would also have the capacity to do that.
But you were mentioning during the break that now there's also a new law that requires media to cover violence against women. Can you talk more about this?
Yeah, RA 10398, which was signed by the President in March,
So
which
just
is Women's
recently,
Month. Yes.
this year, a few months ago, no?
Requires it's really declaring November 25 as the National Consciousness Day on Violence Against Women, because that's International Day to eliminate violence against women. And this is really the start of, in the Philippines, an 18-day campaign to end violence against women. In other countries, it's 16. It ends on December 10, which is Human Rights Day. We've extended it 2 more days, December 12, which is Anti-Trafficking Day. So all these 18 days, we are expected to intensify information dissemination about women's rights, about why they should not be violated. No? And violence covers rape, trafficking, domestic violence, pagbubugbog, battering, all forms of violence.
So basically from November 25 up until around
December
12,
yes.
media,
Yes, it
they're
says media
required
should have at least an hour airtime, radio and TV. DepEd is required to include it in their education. So I hope we partnered again.
Yes, that's good.
Everyone.
Yeah, we should feature that again, in November 25 and December 12 as part of this information drive.
Aside from that, we've also, in the Magna Carta, there's a Media and Gender Equality Committee, and it's headed by PCOO, Secretary Coloma, and all the government media outfits, including KBP, PANA, etc., are parts of the MTRCB. And there are code of ethics and the media guidelines on how to portray women in media.
Okay.
So there shouldn't be any derogatory portrayal of women in media.
I think there's also a
Always
fine
pushing
line
gender
sometimes when you're
equality.
featuring abuse against women.
Yeah.
Between sensationalizing
Yes.
and also covering it as part of an information drive.
Or education or
Yes,
consciousness
to
raising
educate
drive.
against
Yeah.
violence against
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I would like to thank our guest, Ms. Emmeline Verzosa, the Executive Director for the Philippine Commission on Women, for being with us tonight. Join us again next Thursday for another round of discussion right here on News Cafe. I'm Attorney Karen Jimenez, sitting in for Jing Magsaysay. Good night.